Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And a good morning to you. Another beautiful, glorious autumnal morning. It's November 7th, and yiko. Tomorrow's the day we've all been, I don't know, what's the word? Dreading, waiting for. At any rate, all of the, well, it's not true. I was going to say we will continue to live with uncertainty after tomorrow, because my assumption is that we will not know the final results of a number of races tomorrow evening, and maybe not Wednesday and maybe not Thursday. I saw that the Fetterman campaign, I guess, sent something out to, I'm not sure who they sent it to, but saying that, we might not know, which must mean they must think it's a pretty close call, or knowing how slow the votes get counted in certain parts of the. Anyway, patience is what I'm suggesting, and I have eschewed reading any of the poll-driven stuff and the clear, any headline that is about, something like Republicans feeling confident, or Democrats anxiety grows. I've just because there've been a lot of those. The headline's enough to, of course, do the job. I don't know. You know that I am by nature a pessimist, and I think I have reason to be. I happened to be with a person yesterday who is very politically involved in Philadelphia, and he feels absolutely certain. I mean, he ain't losing any sleep. He says Fetterman's a shoo-in, Shapiro's a shoo-in, and man, I hope he's right. And that's his base. I said, what are you basing this on? And he's just basing it on what he's seen, what he's heard, conversations, and in Philly, the sense that an awful lot of people are going to be voting if they haven't already. Whatever, we'll see. This waiting is tough. I have to tell you that my household remains in a state of upheaval, and right now there is a sweet white dog looking at me, and she's been crying, and there's nothing I can do for her. She's also been barking. So if that starts up, that's what's happening. My dog is out. Also, there will be workmen, this time workmen on my house, that might be making noise before the program's over. So we've got a lot of who knows what. When the workmen show up, the dog's going to start barking, and I have no control here. I've lost control, which is okay. One of the things that'll maybe stop and start after tomorrow, which will be good, is all of those god dang texts and tweets and messages and emails or whatever it is that are just constantly bothering us, phone calls. I'm so sick of every campaign in the country thinking somehow that they should bug me. And I know I'm not alone, but it turns out that it's a recent Supreme Court ruling that has allowed the just tsunami of unwanted political texts that might be bedeviling and annoying the heck out of you. It was our wonderful Supreme Court, this right-wing court, that, of course, in some case involving Facebook, sided with Facebook. And somehow their ruling involved a very narrow definition of what's considered unsolicited text messaging. And so where there, I guess, had been some measure of regulation, they, of course, lifted it because these right-wingers don't believe in any. And so you get more and more bombarded. Here's somebody who, the chairwoman of the FCC, said that the Supreme Court decision created a loophole that an awful lot of actors, good and bad, are using and exploiting. And that is why you're seeing this incredible increase in the number of these texts. So I want you to thank, the usuals, Thomas, Alito, that crowd, for this. Since, let's see, in October, so last month, we, people in the United States, received an estimated, who knows, could be bigger, 1.3 billion of these unwanted political text messages. I know you think you received a billion. Well, you received part of that billion. And in April, in the midterm, the onslaught was half of that, less than half of that. And now it's just, and it will continue apace because there is no legislation. There is no federal oversight of this, in part because the technology keeps running way ahead of our extremely sclerotic and arthritic political system, even if it could function with the heavy Republican representation, it's disinclined to do anything of a regulatory nature. So this is only going to get worse. And it, of course, adds to the division in the country. These things are rife with divisive kinds of statements and language and a lot of fake information. Well, it isn't information if it's fake, right? What do we know? The distinction between real and fake has been blurred to the point where it is becoming meaningless. I saw a quote that said that once the line between truth and fake is eroded, and we could say, well, that's already happened. We do have a serious erosion. So the quote was, once the line between truth and fake is eroded, everything will become fake because we will not be able to believe anything. And that is so increasingly true. But if you think about the consequence to us of a situation in which nobody is going to be able to believe anything they see, anything they read, anything they hear, and we're already, whole swaths of the country are already at that point. You could argue anyone supporting this Republican Party is there because they've swallowed a whole pack of lies to be able to support this party. I don't know, guys. So there's that, and it's been annoying, but annoying is not that big a deal. It's unsettling and potentially truly destructive of our country. So let's say the Republicans do tomorrow what they think they're going to do, which is take back the House of Representatives. And it's not like we don't know what they'll do. We know. It's amazing to me that people know what they're going to do, and they're willing to take us all there. One of the more terrifying things is their intent. I mean, they've hidden none of this. The House's intent to use the debt ceiling as a way to take hostage the government. And it is the most reckless, outrageously irresponsible thing. But they've already said, there's one thing they do. They're very transparent about what they intend to do, and it doesn't harm them. It's just amazing. I mean, they said they're going to take people's Medicare, they're going to take their Social Security, and people vote for them. They say they're going to create a crisis in the global financial markets using the debt ceiling as a leverage to get what they want, and people vote for them. Do they understand that the entire global financial system is sort of resting on U.S. Treasuries? There we go, guys. I got no control of this animal. U.S. Treasuries. And Ezra Klein did a good job of trying to explain this. U.S. Treasuries globally are considered the bedrock asset of our planet's financial system. Yeah, our treasuries. Because they are the safest of safe investments. They are the security that other countries and huge funds buy when they want to make sure their money is absolutely secure. That's why they're called securities. So Klein says this. He says, much else in the financial system is priced on this assumption of American reliability. So that lenders begin with the riskless rate of return, that is the interest rate on U.S. Treasuries, and then they add their premiums on top of that. So, if the Republicans were to actually pull this stunt off and cause us to default, it would trigger financial global chaos. It could crash the global economy. But the Republicans have been absolutely straightforward about it. They want to do this. They see this threat as leverage in getting Biden to do what they want Biden to do. Holding all of us hostage. And Klein says, and this is true, a hostage is leverage only if you're willing to follow through on your threat to shoot them, or in this case, to let our debt go unpaid. And there's plenty of Republicans quite willing to pull that trigger. Okay, so this is one thing we're going to get. And then it turns out they have a wish list. There's something called the House Republican Study Committee, and they put out a wish list of the things they do intend to do once they take control in January. They want to abolish the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They're really clamoring to privatize much of Medicare. Of course, repeal much of Obamacare, raise the Social Security age, and I swear they already have no fewer than 8 bills ready to go that would in some way attack critical race theory. What the fuck? What? I mean, what? Would attack racism? No, racism is their friend. Racism is what gets their base all in a just unbelievable. Let me tell you, the campaign to unseat the loathsome senator in Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, has gotten just full-on racist. I mean, there's not even Wisconsin is 87% white, and the Democrats are running a black man, Mandela Barnes, for the Senate to unseat Ron Johnson. And oh my God, I've been reading some of what the ads are saying. They've even had ads. Oh, like this is shocking. The Republican attack ads on the Democrat, Mandela Barnes. First of all, he's a very light-skinned black man. So, of course, in the Republican ads, he looks like Al Jolson in blackface. So they darkened him up, and then they write his name in one of the ads like graffiti on a wall. You know, because black people do that kind of, graffiti stuff. And some of what Johnson has been saying in the last few days is just out and out racist. So, God help us. So, I mean, what we're going to get, and I just saw that there's incredible pressure on Kevin McCarthy, who is a milquetoast, who's like going to get beaten and battered by the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene, to put her in a major leadership position. This is a woman who every time I see her, all I can think of is Adolf Hitler. I mean, I do. She is just, more than any, she seems to embody a sort of fascistic, even in her bearing. She's a racist. She's an anti-Semite. She is just as vile. She's violent. And she is, when they take the House, which they think they're going to do tomorrow, she has some of the big guns behind her, especially a gun named Donald Trump, who these Republicans are terrified of. Terrified of. I also want to warn Ukrainians who will be freezing in their houses this winter that when the Republicans come in, I think they can expect to get colder. So it's not as if Americans don't know what these Republicans are intent on doing, and yet they vote for them, which tells you what? This is what America wants. Maureen Dowd, in her style, was saying, "Are we ready for our new Republican overlords?" And you know, the worst are the women in some ways. This Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert, and she said that Boebert said this at a campaign event. I mean, you cannot parodize this. Parody is the word. This. Boebert said this to an adoring crowd in Arizona. How many AR-15s do you think Jesus would have had? You know what her answer is? Well, he sure didn't have enough to keep his government from killing him. So I guess Boebert is taking issue with Jesus for not having the foresight to arm himself against a tyrannical government. So the makeup of the House of Representatives already has a major contingent of these neo-fascists and racists, scary people. And there are a whole lot scarier ones running, some of whom are going to win tomorrow. And I mean, they're over what? They're counting over 300 people who deny that Joe Biden won the election are running now for the House. And obviously, a whole bunch of those guys will get in. And so they thought the election was rigged. Of course, if they win, they will not think this election was rigged. It's only rigged, as we know. We understand now when they say it's rigged, what it means. It means they didn't win. Anyway, and Dowd says this, and it's true. People who vote for these crazies think they're punishing Democrats, think they're punishing Obama or Biden, and they're punishing themselves, and they're too dumb and crazy to know it. Fine. Unbelievable. I'll tell you, one of the more terrifying stories I have read does involve my home state of Wisconsin. I used to be so proud. I'm sure I've told you this, coming from Wisconsin, because it was the birthplace of the progressive movement. It was the first state before the feds ever did to have unemployment compensation. And I mean, they were just way ahead of everything. And I was just proud. The environmental movement was always strong there. I have watched with, just astonishment as it has been taken by the Republican Party. And this has been the sort of, Wisconsin has been for the Republicans what they've watched it to see this is how you do it. Because if the election goes as people think it will tomorrow, Wisconsin could become a state in which Democrats are totally irrelevant. In other words, a totally one-party state. Even if the Democrat incumbent governor wins, Tony Evers, or Evers, I guess it's pronounced, he will have no power because the Republican veto-proof Republican legislature will redo any parts of the government that might still cause it to be a democracy, essentially. So, and again, here in Wisconsin, the Republicans running are making it very clear what they intend to do. They plan to eliminate the state's elections commission, which is a bipartisan commission. And they intend to take direct control of all elections, which is why the Republican running against Governor Evers, a guy named Michaels, famously said to his supporters, Republicans will never lose another election in Wisconsin after I'm governor. And that could well be true because they will control the election process. They've already gerrymandered the state to get to this point. And so if they get the veto-proof legislature, which it appears they're going to get, they will bring back every bill that Governor Evers vetoed in the last 4 years, and they'll pass them. And those bills will change everything about how schools are funded, how elections are run, how police, abortion will be gone, gun laws, all of that, they'll all pass, and this time the governor's veto will be overridden. And that's probably what's going to happen in my once proud Wisconsin tomorrow. But it, as I said, is being used as a model for what Republicans want to do in every state, or as certainly as many states as they can. So that's a little unsettling, isn't it? And then there was this poll that I did see. I have callers? Oh, I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm not seeing that on my screen. Oh, dang it. Well, let's go to the phones. Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Hey, you were saying that Social Security thing, and I mentioned it last week.
Yeah.
I think that's already a done deal with the Democrats. I think if they get in there, I think they'll sign something with them. I think they have no problem raising the age. And most people, you know what they think? It ain't affected me, so why do I care? That's for the younger ones.
Well,
I mean, I'm over 65.
Yeah.
It wouldn't affect me. But what if they cut it all together, which I think it would collapse the whole economy, so I don't think that's going to happen. But because I think that it's a big part of our economy, that money. It's like, you got to have that money in the system. But I think they're going to do that anyway. I do think the Democrats will go along. They did it before. Clinton did it. I just think it's already they're like playing a game with us, and behind doors they know what they're going to do. I just really feel that way about that. But what I was going to say is how people are saying about this. Okay, we're going to say, like in Wisconsin, we're going to change it all, so we'll never lose election. Well, there's states that the Democrats could have, and they could do the same damn thing. They could say, well, we don't want that guy. We think the Democrats. So, I mean, we could play that game too if the Democrats, they might be forced to play that game and say, hey, we've got the whole thing. We're going to vote. We're going to say the Democrat won. We'll just get our seats back. We're going to have to fight fire with fire if it comes to that. But my big thing is too, isn't this election fraud to begin with? Isn't it that election fraud? And what is the DOJ going to just sit back and say, oh, well, that's what they did. Oh, well. I mean, come on.
Well, a lot of this has to, no, this would all make its way to this kind of thing would make its way to the Supreme Court. And
or they commit election fraud to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, so they'll say that well, you could argue that the fact that George W. Bush was president of the United States was a Supreme Court election fraud. They decided who won that election, even though Al Gore had more votes. So So I don't know. I think my sense is that our democracy is pretty much done.
But
because you can't have a democracy if you don't have two parties, at least minimally, that ascribe to the same rules. And we now have one that refuses to.
And
so it doesn't matter. And Democrats, if they were to play the same game, then we still have lost our democracy.
When I see visions of if it got that bad where the Republicans got in there, I think the military would take over the country. I really do. Because they don't have to listen to it. They follow the Constitution.
Yes, but then we have lost our democracy. We'll be run
by the military.
Then we lost I'm telling you, if you're looking to the military to save our country,
I'm not looking
then we've lost our democracy. I'm saying that's what you're thinking. But they look to your mind
so
right now. That looks maybe better.
You think all the generals?
No, I don't. Look, I'm just saying the country we have known and the systems that we have thought would always be in place, I think are on death's door. I do.
Well, I think we didn't have enough checks and balances to begin with. That's my problem. I didn't. Yeah. It was good what they made, but they just didn't have enough guardrails or whatever you want to call it. It was kind of like loosey-goosey or whatever you want to call it. I don't know.
Okay. Hey, thanks for your call.
Good luck. Sorry to take up all your time.
No, you haven't taken up all my time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. I just don't know if I have another caller. Bye-bye. If there's another caller there, come on in.
Hi, Lynn.
Hello?
Dave in Washington.
Hi.
I have not talked to you in a long, long time.
No, I haven't heard your voice, and it's good to hear you.
Well, actually, I have the flu right now, but thank you very much anyways. Before I get to the main thing, I just want to catch up on a couple things. Do you remember a couple of years ago, back in 2005, 2006, 2007, whenever I called you, my name in those days was Dave by the Sea. Do you remember that?
Yeah. No, I don't.
Okay, well, the sea that I was by was the Gulf of Mexico, and the island I lived on was Fort Myers Beach, which, of course, has been in the news a lot lately. The house I lived in at the time when I was calling you is completely gone, and the other house down at the other house down at the other end of the island is severely damaged. It probably is still standing. We don't own it anymore. It's probably still standing, but it's heavily damaged. Anyways, that was my little island down there. I've been going there since I was 5 years old, and it is pretty much gone.
It's gone.
So anyway, that's what I was saying about that. Yeah, it's very sad. Republicans are not the problem. They're just doing what Republicans do. The problem are Democratic voters. Imagine there's a bunch of people sitting outside in front of your house throwing Molotov cocktails and dynamite and stuff at your house, and you're thinking, this is really starting to piss me off, but you know what? I'm just not motivated enough to do anything about it.
You're saying exactly what my guest was here last night from Philly was saying. Yeah. There is no way that Democrats should lose because there's more of us. There are more people who want what we're selling, but they don't vote. Well, okay.
I'm disheartened because gas is too expensive, so I'm not going to go vote. Like, that's going to solve the problem. It's the Democratic voters who are the problem, and I'm not going to blame them for picking Fetterman. But what a disaster that has turned out to be. Connor Lamb would not have had a stroke, but nobody could have foreseen that. Although I suppose you could have, because he had the stroke a couple of days before the election. But I don't want to get into that. Fetterman, I think, is going to lose, or he's just going to barely squeak through. Should have crushed him. The way Shapiro is going to crush Mastriano. That I don't have any issue with. Fetterman should crush. All the Democrats should. All the Democrats. And I've said this before to you. You talk about reproductive rights, abortion rights. What you're talking about is women's rights. Men, that's not a right that extends to men. And, the country is predominantly pro-choice. Okay, well, then why don't you go out and vote? Oh, because gasoline is $4 a gallon. I get it. Like the Republicans, are going to do anything about that. Or inflation is too high. What are they going to do about it? Nothing. But they've got these great commercials, and they've convinced me that Summer Lee, what the fuck does she have to do with anything? Who knows? But she's all over the place. And gullible voters go right along with it. This, and I've told you this before, this is why I refuse to join the Democratic Party, even though I vote for them all the time. I hold my nose and do so because I'm a lefty, not because I'm a Democrat. Anyways,
I hear you.
I'm just thoroughly annoyed. There's no reason for us to have to put up with this shit. But either they're unmotivated.
We're not going to have to put up with it for much longer. We're going to lose the whole game.
I retire in 3 years, 2 months, and 2 days. And I'll tell you what, Mexico's looking much, much better every day. My pension, my investments, everything is going to go a heck of a lot further in Mexico. I'm going to sit around, eat burritos, and drink tequila all day.
Do you think can you imagine that in 10 years it could be that the direction of people crossing the border is from here to Mexico?
Going the other way.
And that Mexico starts trying to get control of these marauding Americans coming across the border.
Although Mexico does love American retirees. We don't take jobs and we bring a lot of money. So they might like it. Permanent residency. They do like that. Lots of money. We're not taking any jobs. But this is it. It's the voters. Blame the damn voters. Don't blame the politicians. Yeah, they say we're going to take away your Social Security. We're going to do this. We're going to investigate Hunter Biden because that's a really big thing that has got to be addressed.
Don't think that's not number one. That is not. They will go after that poor guy. That poor soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's the history of
the worst person on earth. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that really.
Oh God.
All right, well, we'll see what happens, but this is gonna be ugly.
All right.
So, I'll see you in Mexico.
Good to hear from you.
How about that, Lynn? Yeah, you too. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, sorry about your place in Florida, man.
Yeah, my little house. It's all gone. So, all right.
Okay.
Talk to you later.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Speaking of Fetterman, there's a final Fetterman rally for any of you who go to such things. Tonight, it's this big get out the vote, final appearance, 8 to 10 tonight, just, at Carpenters Union Hall, which is off of 376 near Settlers Cabin Park, I think. 650 Ridge Road. If you're interested, I'm just telling you, passing it up. Oh boy. I don't know about you, but I need an obituary to cheer me up. Hang on here. Oh, Jesus. Daniel Smith, 90 years old. Incredible life he led. He actually said at one point he was sort of like a black Zelig. If you ever saw Zelig, the Woody Allen film, a guy who just showed up at every sort of important political event. For some reason, there he was. And Daniel Smith had some of that as well. But the obit, the headline of the obit says that his real claim to fame, that made him gotten him a obituary, big obituary, is Daniel Smith was thought to be the last person alive in this country who was born to someone who had been a slave. The last child of an American slave. His father was born into slavery in 61 or something. And he didn't know. He says because No one knew your precise birth date. But anyway, he was born into slavery, and he fathered Daniel when he was quite old. So Daniel was born in 1932. So he was 70 when his wife gave birth to Daniel. So, but what a interesting life this guy led. That former slave, his dad, Abram Smith, was somebody who managed through all that horror and terror of Jim Crow to raise a family and to send all of his children through college, which is just amazing. And then this son, as I said, he sometimes joked he was he joked he was the Black Forest Gump. Who I guess also, showed up at all these events. I was doing the wrong movie. He was at the March on Washington in 1963. He crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma with Dr. King in 65. He was in the audience when Barack Obama took the oath of office as the first Black president in 2009. And he later created emergency health centers in Lebanon and Morocco and South Africa. He was there to observe the installation of Desmond Tutu as Archbishop of Cape Town. And then, get this, so he retires finally in 1994, and he volunteers to be an usher at the Washington National Cathedral. And he eventually became the chief usher. And as the chief usher, Daniel Smith, son of a slave, and this remarkable man who had a remarkable career, showed President George H.W. Bush, President Bill Clinton, and President George W. Bush and their families to their seats. There's one just extraordinarily unsettling story here, that when the Republicans take over the country, these stories will not be able to be told anymore. They'll be whispered. But here, because they will say these things did not happen. But listen to this story. He was working at a YMCA camp in Connecticut in the mid-1950s. And he saw a woman being pulled from a flooded quarry. She was unconscious. She was still alive. And because he was trained to do so, he ran over and began doing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on her. But a white police officer who was there pulled him off. Refused to allow him to save this woman's life. The white police officer didn't then move in. And it's something that never, can you imagine? You're trying to save someone's life, you're pulled away, and he said he let that she was white, the now dead woman. He let her die rather than have a black man touch her lips. I'll never, ever forget that. But in Republicans' America, that story will be an apocryphal tale told by Democrats who we know hate America. You know they hate America, or they wouldn't tell a story like that. This is something that annoyed the heck out of me. Let me share my annoyance with you. David Brooks wrote a column that is otherwise, I didn't have any objections to it. But he's mostly referring to the fact that the country is split, and that it's split along, his point is mostly split along educational lines, which doesn't, is somewhat true, not totally. There's plenty of highly educated people who are Republicans and plenty of undereducated people who vote for Democrats. But by and large, voters seem to be more highly educated, and Republican voters not. But to start the piece, and this is where my anger at media, and even somebody who can be as thoughtful in his words as David Brooks, to start the piece, trying to explain this division in the country, he says this: nothing the parties have done has really changed the underlying balance, which is pretty much 50-50, he's saying. It really isn't, because as our last caller said, there are more Democrats. They just don't vote. Sorry to scream at you. But then, to prove his point, Brooks says this: the Republicans nominated a pathetically incompetent Senate candidate, Herschel Walker, in Georgia. The polls show that race is basically tied. The Democrats, see, here's the both sidism. The Democrats nominated a guy in Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, who suffered a stroke and has trouble communicating. But polls show that Senate race is basically tied. Well, I read that and went ballistic, because in attempting to say the Republicans on one hand and the Democrats on the other, to make it seem as if there is, both sides are doing the same thing, he really couldn't come up with someone on the Democratic side like Herschel Walker, a total incompetent, lying, violent fool. Because Democrats did not nominate anybody like that. And equating John Fetterman on the left with Herschel Walker on the right is so outrageous. I just went berserk. And this is how much so-called legitimate journalists who've learned that, you have to give both sides, how they will strain to do that, and by that straining to do it, make a false point, a false analogy. There is no way in heaven that Herschel Walker could be deemed qualified to serve in the Senate of the United States. John Fetterman had a stroke. It impaired his ability to speak and process thoughts. He is getting better. And he will be able to perform the duties of a senator. Herschel Walker. He is what Republicans think of as a black man. He's really good in football. And yeah, he screws a lot of women, knocks them up, and then he pays for their abortions. But he's against abortion. He's perfect for us. He's violent. God almighty. To equate Walker and Fetterman, you have got to be kidding me. Okay. There's something I read that just broke my heart. And again, this is a kind of history that when Republicans control education will not be allowed to be taught. I have a friend who's visiting me, and she teaches all over the country. She's amazing. She was once on this show. She's an actor. She's a playwright, and she goes into prisons. She does amazing work. In fact, she's at the prison in Fayette County right now. It's her dog who was barking, by the way. And she's there to work with prisoners. Does these amazing programs where they write and find their voices, and it's just mind-blowing. But she has found that she's got to now watch what she says when she goes to certain schools, certain districts, where they're now no longer allowed. Where she used to do things with maybe some black activists, she now has to really tiptoe around that in some of these districts. Not kidding. She was worried the other day because she did a presentation in a nearby county that is Trump country. So she had to figure that the kids, I think they were middle schoolers, were, heavily indoctrinated in Republicanism. And somehow the subject, fascism came up because she teaches about the Holocaust. And you're teaching about the Holocaust, the word fascism comes up. And in trying to explain to the kids what she said, maybe you've heard of Antifa. I said, you said that in, Beaver County? A bunch of kids, Antifa? Because, sure, they heard of Antifa. Antifa's who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Antifa is responsible for all the violence in this country. But no, she was speaking from fact. She said Antifa stands for anti-fascist. That's where she went, and she says they began as an anti-fascist group. But later, after she was done, and driving back, she was thinking, "Oh my God, why did I say Antifa?" So there's already this incredible chilling effect going on in schools, public and private. And here's another story that we won't tell. This is a story of what we did to the Native Americans, the near genocide of the indigenous population of America. You've heard of this. In 1835, the United States expelled the Cherokee Nation from its home in Georgia. That's where they lived. Had lived for God knows. I don't know. The United States government went in and they told those people, you're getting out of here. And we're giving you a new home. It's a nice place. You got to walk. They walked at gunpoint to Oklahoma. A trail of tears. But the government signed a treaty with them. And in 1835, they said, here's what we're going to do. We're giving you this other land. You got to go there at gunpoint. And we will give you that other land, and we will also give you a seat in our House of Representatives. Now, it won't be a voting seat, but you will be there. Your representative can serve on cases. It's sort of like exactly what District of Columbia has. D.C., I guess Guam, they have a seat. That kind of a seat. We'll give you that. Well, it shouldn't surprise you that we never honored that. This government signed a treaty, the United States government, with the Cherokee Nation, and we did not live up to it. Now, I assure you, that's not the only treaty we didn't live up to. But the reality is that treaty exists. And so there is a push on by some to say, hey, it might be 187 years later, but we want to take our seat. The reality is, someone taking that seat, representing the Cherokee Nation, would be representing almost 500,000 people, 430,000 people are Cherokee in this country. And you know what? That is more than the combined population of all these other places that have seats, like the Virgin Islands and District of Columbia. I don't know about D.C., Guam, and all that kind of stuff. And let me tell you, the odds that this will happen, not good. Why? Because we're about to put in a Republican Congress. And because there is a Supreme Court which is hearing a case regarding Native Americans this term, and everybody is very nervous about it, having to do with adoption, because this court has had more than one ruling already that has undermined Native American rights or treaty obligation. They've reversed sovereignty rulings. In one ruling in June, they upended long-standing precedent. It's the most activist court you will ever see. They expanded the power of state governments over the tribes that live within them. So I just wanted to point that out. The United States government did not live up to its word. There were so many of those Cherokee that died on that forced march. And they never got what we told them we'd give them. And it appears we still aren't going to do it because the Republicans, believe me, Republicans, won't even acknowledge that these things happen. It makes white people feel bad. It makes people less patriotic. The only way you're going to get patriotism in America is if you lie to them. You got to lie, do mythologies. That's what works. We're always the good guys. We're never the bad guys. We are God's gift to the world. That's what Republicans think. They won't allow us to be complicated humans. Very complicated humans. Well, guys, that's it for me. I see the clock on the wall telling me that. Thank you for being here. God help us. If there's anything you can do to help somebody get to the polls, do that. I don't have to tell you this, but yeah. And if you believe in a supreme being, send up a prayer or two. It won't hurt. Talk to you tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.